Thank you for joining us for this introduction to the Thermoglaze 25 pre-fried donut system by Belshaw, the worldwide leader in donut production equipment. Thermoglaze is a revolutionary donut system that thaws, heats, and glazes pre-fried frozen donuts. As a beginning thermoglaze operator, there are a few standard procedures you need to know in order to produce high-quality donuts. We'll begin by introducing you to the 3 stages of operating your thermoglaze machine. Then we'll go over the standard procedures you'll use in processing your donuts. Following that, we'll show you how to clean and maintain your equipment. The first stage in the thermoglaze system is the thermalizer. It holds very humid, warm air and is the first place the pre-fried donuts go when you take them from the box. Normally, you'll leave the donuts in the thermalizer to thaw for 20 to 30 minutes. Anytime up to 5 hours after the donuts are thawed out, you'll transfer them to the thermoglaze oven. You'll take 1 screen of donuts at a time from the thermalizer and place it on the conveyor which carries them through the convection oven. The third stage is the waterfall glazer. The glazer pump under the machine circulates glaze up to the top of the glaze waterfall. Some donuts will be iced. For these, you can turn the glazer off. After you've completed the 3 stages, all that's needed is to place the screens of donuts either on the shelf below the machine or a baking rack. Now let's go over the standard operating procedures for thermoglaze. Before you open a box of donuts, turn on the thermalizer switch at the bottom of the thermalizer. Then turn on the oven switch. The indicator light will come on. The glazer has its own switch, which should remain off until you pour in some glaze. Now you can break open 1 or more boxes of frozen donuts. Spread the donuts as evenly as possible onto the thermoglaze screens and insert the screens into the thermalizer. Try not to leave the frozen donuts in the open air for long, as they'll gradually lose moisture and freshness. Do not thaw out your donuts overnight. Then let them thaw until they're warm to the touch. Typically, thawing takes 20 to 30 minutes. Filled donuts may take longer because of their frozen filling. Let's take a moment to look again at the thermalizer. When you turn it on, the inside of the thermalizer window will gradually begin to steam up. This is normal. If you don't steam up, you may need to turn up the humidity and/or the temperature. The dials are located left and right side of the thermalizer control box, respectively. Some thermalizers have an auto water connection, which automatically supplies them with water. Otherwise, you'll have to refill the thermalizer with water manually. You should always use distilled water, or scaling may eventually occur. When the reservoir becomes empty, a warning buzzer will sound. Now let's look at the thermoglaze oven. When donuts are fully thawed in the thermalizer, check that the oven has reached its operating temperature, which is normally 400 degrees Fahrenheit or 205 degrees Celsius. This can take up to 30 minutes. So remember to turn on the oven at the same time you turn on the thermalizer at the beginning of the day. Now simply remove 1 screen of donuts at a time from the thermalizer and place it on the conveyor. Until you're familiar with adjusting settings, you should not need to change the oven's temperature or speed. If you do, your thermoglaze manual has instructions for doing this. If you would like to produce donuts at full capacity of the thermoglaze, try to remember this tip. As you remove each screen, load the thermalizer right away with another screen of frozen donuts. Keep the gaps between screens to a minimum as they go through the oven, and you'll be using the thermoglaze's full capacity. Let's turn our attention to the glazer. While your donuts are thawing, fill the glazer kettle so that you'll have glaze ready when the first screen of donuts comes through. Empty about 15 to 25 kilos or 30 to 50 pounds of glaze compound into the glaze kettle. When there's plenty of glaze in the kettle, turn on the pump switch. the glaze will begin to circulate. The glazer works automatically, and all that's normally necessary for the operator to do is to keep an eye on the amount of glaze left in the kettle. As donuts come through the thermoglaze, the glaze in the kettle will eventually need refilling. Keep a generous amount of glaze in the kettle at all times. When you need to ice donuts rather than glazing them, just turn off the glazer. You can prevent drips with a quick wipe or two with a spatula. After each screen of donuts comes to the end of its travel through the glazer, you can pick it up with the Teflon handle supplied with the thermoglaze. And remember to shut off the glazer when there's no glaze available to circulate, or the pump will eventually wear out.